The Gospel of the Lord. As we all know, Padre Pio, an incredible saint, incredible witness to the love of God and what he suffered and the fruitfulness of what God can achieve in a soul who hands themselves over to Christ completely. And let us today invoke his prayers, his intercession, especially for the priesthood in the church, all the difficulties that we've faced in the modern times in regard to priestly life and the priests that we have serving in the church. Let us ask his prayers especially for our priests. Just continuing a little bit, very briefly, I'll try to be as brief as possible on the topics that we've been covering over the last week. I have been attempting through the last 6 days, and I'll continue next week, to unfold a little bit the principles, the important principles philosophically and thereby ethically, and then the principles in our faith, so our Christian principles, that should inform certain decisions when it comes to the vaccines that are on the table today in various ways. And I will begin to look next week at the COVID vaccines that we've all been through this period in looking at. One thing I was saying yesterday is when we have a healthy self-love, and that self-love is to be put at the service of the ones that we love, including others that we may not even know, and ultimately at the service of love of God. There can be times then when we will be called in our prudence to risk our life, and there'll be times when we'll be called in our prudence to safeguard our life. And what motivates each of those should always be love for the other, whether it's our close friends and family, whether it's the community, or whether it's ultimately Christ. And there can be times when I'm called to risk even my life itself and to die for the sake of my friend. Jesus said, and I said it yesterday, a man can have no greater love than to lay down his life for his friends. And when we do that for God himself, yes, we become a martyr. But there can be times, obviously, in human life when we are called to safeguard our life for our friends. And there, obviously, in family, it can be also at the service of the community and safeguarding our life so that we can continue to love God. And when it comes to taking medicines, yes, clearly, vaccines are in this category. As long as the vaccines are proven, they are safe, and they do not have ulterior and other particular side effects that outweigh the good that they look to achieve in our life and in the community. And there, yes, there's a distinction to be made. I can safeguard my health for the sake of my children. A parent would do that if they have a serious disease. They'll look to take all the medical treatments, medicines, including vaccines, for the sake of the ones that they love, their children, and their husband or their wife. And there, I'm safeguarding my health out of love for another that I love. But when it comes to vaccines also, I might safeguard my health to protect others from infection. And there, it's not just saving my life so that I can love, but it's taking a vaccine so that others are protected and I don't become an agent of transmission of a disease. And thereby it's eminently intelligent, the way that we have developed our medical technology today, in order to prevent widespread infection, to want to achieve what we call herd immunity with proven and safe medicines. And there, yes, it is an act of self-love, it's an act of love for our friends, it can be an act of love for the community, and it can indeed be a manifestation of an act of love of God when we are seeing Christ in our brothers and sisters, seeing Christ in strangers and foreigners, as Jesus calls us to do, the poor, and seeing Christ in our friends. And that's important. The reason I'm saying these things is because there has been a tendency, given what happened last year with the vaccines and all the difficulty with the COVID vaccines, the questions and controversies on their safety, efficacy, necessity, etc., Some people then have tended to assert things in a disordered way, even as Catholics, and in the name of proclaiming their freedom and their dignity and their autonomy when it comes to the right to refuse a medicine, as we have a right to do, there has been sometimes some extremes where people have said, no, I won't take any medicine for the sake of the community or anybody else. I assert my freedom in a disordered way. And remember, my brothers and sisters, God has not given us freedom for the sake of our own freedom so that we can do what we want. God has given us freedom so that we serve the true good and the truth, including our own good and our self-love, the good of others and love of others, and the good ultimately of God in an infinite and supernatural way. And there we must use our freedom responsibly. And the Church has been very clear when it comes to vaccines that are proven and tested, that are safe and do not have adverse side effects that outweigh the good that they're looking to achieve. There is a responsibility and indeed at times a duty, an obligation to take medicines, whether it's for the sake of my own life so I can love my children when I'm young and still have a lot of life ahead of me, or when it's sometimes the necessity to take a vaccine to protect the community from overall outbreak of a serious disease that will lead either to death or serious mutations or other things in human life. And there, my brothers and sisters, it is an eminent use of our intelligence at the service of our own life, the life of others, and the common good, the life of the community. So let us not be seduced at times because we're afraid of communism and socialism and the overstepping of power in the state to try to harry us into certain positions. Yes, that is clearly present today. The abuse of power and the subordination of personal rights to the common good in a disordered way, that is clearly a danger and present and has been present especially last year. But let us not use that as an excuse by which then we assert a disordered individualism against the common good and set myself up in isolation and only think of myself. And that can be definitely a selfishness, a temptation of the devil. And we want to have a proper, ordered, right Catholic understanding of our responsibilities and duties, the way that we love God, love our neighbor, love ourselves at the service of good things and true things. We want to make sure, the reason I'm saying this is because I think this will happen again. There will probably be another round in a few years' time of another virus of a certain kind, we don't know what, where all these questions will arise again. And we need to make sure that we have proper Catholic regard in these regards and a true, realistic, philosophical regard on these questions and on these dilemmas and on these problems. Tomorrow and next week I'll begin to look at cooperation in evil, because as you know, the vaccines for mumps, rubella and other things, measles, and the COVID vaccines, almost all of them, not all, were tainted by cooperation in the abortion industry. And so it raises a question not only as to how we use medicines in the ordinary sense, but now how we use medicines that have been produced by some kind of cooperation in the industry of abortion, an intrinsic evil of a serious, serious kind. It raises questions for us. How do we choose? How do we discern? To what level can we use these things? And to what level must we say no? And there I will begin tomorrow to look at cooperation in evil and how God himself indeed does materially cooperate in evil, as shocking as that sounds. And I'll begin with God himself in order to show us that if God himself can cooperate in evil in various ways, never causing evil, never directly causing sin in any way that would be blasphemous, but when he is shown to be allowing sin in the creation, and then he himself enters the creation in the incarnation and dines with sinners and spends time in the darkness in order to redeem us. It sheds enormous light on how we must discern our cooperation in evil in our own Christian life. The goal of our Christian life is not to set ourselves up to be as morally pure and separated from evil as possible. That is impossible, in fact, in a fallen, broken world. The question then becomes, How is Christ leading us through the darkness of the world? And how must we navigate those things without sinning and offending God? And we'll begin to look at those things tomorrow. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.